As a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. So the first thing we're going to do is have you, we're going to have our GovHR representative come up and give us a little bit of spiel on what we're doing for the process, Mr. Vetrano, and then we will begin interviews.
Perfect.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to talk right over your shoulder, Darwin, but it'll be
Okay.
very quick. Thank you, council members and mayor. Exact same process as last evening. We'll have the same amount of time. I'll keep time. I appreciate the mayor giving me little looks as you get towards that end of the question period, whether you're continuing or not. We're trying to be equitable with time with candidates. So far, that's been equitable with number of questions also, but we're going to cut questions if we have that choice between time and questions. But everything went well last night. Candidates have an opportunity to introduce themselves based on the questions that you have, so I don't do an introduction of the candidates. And I will turn it back to the mayor unless there are any questions for me.
Anyone?
Thank you.
Okay, great. We are welcoming Mr. Darwin McClary here this evening as our first candidate. And I'm going to begin with the first question, which is, what made you interested in serving in the city of Clawson at this time? I'm assuming you did all of your research on us. You know we have several challenges, but we're also an outstanding community. I'm curious what made you interested in Clawson, and if you want to share a few unique skills that you have that you think would make you very uniquely qualified at this point.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, council members, for this opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity for me. Why Clawson? I would have to say because my roots are here in Oakland County and in this area in particular. I was born in Rochester Hills. I grew up in Rochester and Oxford, but I lived down here in Ferndale for 10 years as well, and served on the Ferndale Civil Service Board as a member, then as vice chair, and then as chair. Dave Coulter actually was the one that appointed me to the position when he was mayor down in Ferndale. This is home to me. My ancestors settled just northwest of here. They came from Ireland in 1849 at the height of the potato famine and settled on their farms near Crooks and Big Beaver Road. So they were here by 1850. They were one of the founding families of the First Presbyterian Church in Troy. And most of them are buried in the Royal Oak Cemetery, the old Royal Oak Cemetery. So my roots run deep here. I consider myself a native Detroiter, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else if I have the choice, and managing anywhere else. Over half of my career has been managing communities here in Southeast Michigan. In Macomb County, Oakland County, and Wayne County. So this is definitely home to me. I won't go into my resume. You have all that background information, but I do understand that Clawson is at a crossroads right now. You have a number of challenges. I know that you are working as a council to try to find how to work well together, and that is an ongoing process for you. And there are a number of challenges in the community that you are trying to deal with. I think one of the major ones is getting a firm understanding and handle on the finances of the city. But I think a lot of your challenges are internal challenges. I've watched your council meetings, a lot of them that have occurred over the past 2 years. I've read all of your council minutes over the past 2 years. And I sense frustration on the part of the council in what they perceive as obstacles from administration in getting answers to questions, staying on top of projects. And I say perception because there's always another side to that story. And I haven't had an opportunity to talk to staff, so I don't get that side of it. But if it is a concern for council, then it is something that needs to be worked on. I think you need a seasoned city manager who has a lot of experience managing large and small communities, that has an understanding of the role of the city manager and the role of the city council and how we work together and how we respect each other's roles. The city manager takes direction from the council. The manager does not direct the council. But also, it's very important for the council to respect the role of the city manager in being able to manage the day-to-day operations of the city government. So I know you're trying to find your way in that regard, but I know there are frustrations. I know you have asked for information, and I've seen over the past year, and some of it I think has to do with the transition you've been in as far as getting information. But there have been frustrations. The budget process, the frustration with some council members on the last budget process, and the perceptions around the timeliness in getting the budget prepared, getting it presented to council so that council could deliberate timely before decisions were made on the final budget. So there are a number of issues. You need a seasoned manager. You need one that is organized, that can report to you at every council meeting on the status of the tasks that the manager has, and be able to communicate those clearly to you in a way that you can understand and get a clear picture of exactly where we stand at any given time. And one of the documents that I've presented to you is the status reports that I like to provide on particular projects that I'm working on. I really, truly believe that you need someone with that experience and with the knowledge of municipal operations, knowledge of municipal law, someone who can work closely with Rennis on legal issues, and both being able to report back to council. But the manager has to have a good rounded knowledge of municipal law as well, so that we make sure the manager's staying in his or her lane and council is staying in their lane, and that we are all acting in the best interests of our citizens. So those are just a few things that I feel that I could bring to the city of Clawson.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you for participating in this, and we appreciate your opportunity to be here. One of the great strengths of the city is its traditional community feel and access to major metropolitan areas. How has your professional experience prepared you to build on this city's strength, and what would you do to further this positive aspect of the community?
So I have more than 30 years of experience as a city and village manager here in Michigan, in every aspect of municipal management, whether it's human resources management, labor relations, budgeting and finance, capital improvement planning, community and economic development and redevelopment, strategic planning. My experience pretty much runs the gamut. I think that would serve the city well in being able to move forward quickly on what the goals of the council are. The Clawson is a community that is nestled amongst other communities that are really on a recovery track, but it's an exciting time. You see what's happening in Ferndale and Royal Oak, Birmingham, and some of the other communities. And and Clawson can really take advantage of those opportunities. I saw in the master plan you want to create your own unique identity that is somewhat different from your neighbors, but maybe similar in other ways. So my experience in community and economic development, my experience working collaboratively with other units of government, other cities, the county, SEMCOG, the Michigan Municipal League, and other organizations and partners is extremely important. I know that you partner with a number of communities for several services, and so it's important that you have a city manager who understands the importance of that and can work as part of a team, work collaboratively with those partners in a way that finds win-win solutions. Because you can't just take, you have to give. And you have to give as much as you take, at least, to make partnerships work. And I feel that my experience has provided me with that background to be able to do that and to serve the city well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach them?
So I think the most important opportunities for the city are, first of all, you have a lot of your resources already in place to be able to do what you need to do. Clawson is a community, and I was looking at your budget, your staffing levels. You're somewhat on the lean side in terms of both, actually. But you do have the basic structure in place to move forward to maintain high-quality municipal services for your citizens cost effectively. You have a downtown that is a beautiful downtown. It does need some work. You have some gaps in your downtown, and you really need to fill those in and create a continuous streetscape in your downtown, which will make it more walkable and maybe diversify the business, the types of businesses in your downtown a little more. Some of them destination businesses as well as your neighborhood services, so that you are bringing people into the community. But you have the good beginnings of that. You've got some great restaurants in your town. You've got a wonderful residential community. The homes are beautiful. It reminds me so much of the bungalow, the 1940s, 50s, and 60s bungalows and ranches that you see in downtown Rochester, which is where I lived. It is a beautiful community. It seems to be a tight-knit community, and you have a lot of citizens who are engaged and want to be even more engaged. So you have a lot of opportunities. The challenges are, I think, moving forward is determining a long-term strategic vision for the community. Where do you want to go from here? You have some good plans in place. You've got the downtown plan that the Planning Commission and DDA and Council worked on a few years ago. You've got the master plan, and now you're working on an update to the master plan. You have an active DDA. But first and foremost, I think there needs to be some comprehensive understanding of what your vision is as a community, and then translate that into specific goals goals on what you want to do. Continuing to strengthen your economic base is important. Incorporating sustainability into your decision-making, both from an economic standpoint, a social standpoint, and an environmental standpoint. Creating a better, more cohesive working relationship between council members and between council and administration. And also, I think, and I'm going to be honest, rebuilding the public trust. In watching council meetings, you hear citizens come up and say that that they're concerned about the way that the city is conducting itself. They want to see a cohesive council. They want to see a competent city administration that can continue to provide good services to them cost effectively. So these are some of the challenges that your next city manager are going to have to work with you on.
It's all you.
Okay, the next one's going to be about me. Former city manager told me a story of how he used to take the entire city council into the conference room just before a council meeting, and when they came out and went into the council chambers, they knew how to vote. Do you think that's a violation of the Open Meeting Act? And tell me your thoughts about that and what your concerns you might have with this method of reaching a consensus.
Well, I am not an attorney. I don't give legal opinions, but I can tell you from my experience as a city manager, that is not proper. It probably is a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but Rennis would be able to tell you that much more definitively than I could. In my non-legal opinion, yes, it is a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
More important is how would you build a consensus?
I think you build a consensus by, first of all, conducting your business in the open. Sitting down, if you have to have workshops. I know that you've started doing work sessions before your regular meetings on an as-needed basis. What I have done in the past is I have asked my councils to hold quarterly workshop meetings where the only item on the agenda is items of general concern. That is the item that's on the agenda. So it allows for discussion on anything. And it allows for an open, free discussion between council members and between council and administration on whatever issues and concerns you may have, and bounce ideas off each other on how we may be able to move forward. That's how I would handle it, but it should always be a public meeting. There are rare exceptions for meeting in closed session, and only specific reasons to meet in closed session. But the council should be conducting its business in the open, transparently, in the sunshine, so that citizens know how you're reaching your decisions.
Okay. Please describe in detail your approach to municipal budgeting, including the process you will use to communicate important budget objectives to City Council.
So one of the documents that I actually distributed to you is the budget calendar that I have prepared for one of my previous employers, but I use some similar format in all of my positions to communicate exactly what the process is for preparing and adopting the budget. If you have a July 1st fiscal year, which Clawson does, you really need to start the process no later than December by adopting your budget calendar. And what I do is I present the proposed budget calendar for the council to discuss, make whatever changes you want to make to the schedule. Any additional items you might want to have added to that schedule, and then adopt it. One of the very first things the council should be doing is engaging in annual goal setting. And another thing that I provided to you is what I use for goal setting processes. I believe very strongly in SMART goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, they're relevant, and they're time-bound. It is a process, and it takes a lot of work, both on the part of the council and administration, to go through that process. But it's important that you start that early. Because what should happen is the budget that the city manager and his or her staff prepares should flow from the policy priorities that the council has set. Resources should be allocated to those priorities. I also believe strongly in priority-based budgeting, shifting more resources to priorities and away from things that either you haven't measured or you know aren't working well. There's no sense in spending money on those things. Start to funnel those very limited resources toward your priorities. And then it's a process. A lot of it is internal with me and my staff preparing the budget. Once we have clear direction from the council on your priorities for the upcoming budget and beyond, then I work closely with my staff on preparing departmental budgets, making sure that that department heads have prepared their own goals and objectives, and those goals and objectives should flow from the council's priorities. And then department heads can add whatever additional priorities they feel are necessary for their departments, because they are our experts in their fields. So they should have good input, and we should be listening to that input. Again, a lot of it is tedious process, doing our revenue estimating. And we get those numbers from a number of sources. From the assessing office on preliminary assessment numbers, and then after the board of review, the final assessment numbers. Looking at the latest numbers for revenue sharing based on the latest revenue estimating conference that the legislature does, and many other things. And it's the city manager's responsibility to look at the budget requests that are submitted by departments, look at the revenue estimates, and then work with department heads to prepare a balanced budget proposal for council consideration. My experience is usually that budget should go to council at the latest, the first meeting in April, so that the council has time to schedule. You should have already scheduled your budget work sessions as part of the budget schedule you adopted the previous fall, but so that council has adequate time to hold budget work sessions, get your questions answered, make whatever changes you want to make to the budget document before you hold your public hearings and adopt the budget. But you also have to look at your fee schedule, your water and sewer and other rates that you levy, your millage rates. All of that is part of the process. So it is a long process. It's involved. It has to be timely. And I do know that was a frustration with some council members this past year. I hope I answered the question.
Let's see. What do you see as the city manager's role in communicating with the press and public? And how specifically do you plan to be successful in communicating with the public?
The role of the city manager in communicating with the public or speaking on behalf of the city is really depends on what direction is provided from city council. The city council determines what the role of the city manager is in speaking on behalf of the city. Now, I did see in the job description that James had prepared, one of the things that was noted in there was that the city manager is the spokesperson for the city. But that is a decision that the council needs to make. I have, in many of my positions, I have been the official spokesperson for the city. Because some of my councils felt most comfortable in having their professional administrator be able to respond quickly and appropriately in explaining what the position of the city and the city council are. But I've had other councils who felt that it was the mayor's responsibility to speak on behalf of the city and be that person who is out in front in the community talking to the media. So I would take my direction from the council on that. I'm comfortable in either role. I do believe very strongly that you have to have a good working relationship with your media. Your local media can be a great source of support and dissemination of information in a positive way, or the media can be an obstacle to accomplishing what you need to accomplish. The media really are an important partner for the city. You need to treat them well. You need to be open and transparent with them, give them timely information so that they can do their jobs in preparing their articles and getting information out. I also believe very strongly in open, honest, and unfettered communication between administration and council and between the city manager and other staff. We cannot accomplish what we need to accomplish if we are not communicating well with each other, if we are not open and honest with what we're doing and what we're thinking. And so that is very important. Our citizens need to know what we're doing. It goes back to the previous question about operating in the sunshine. Our citizens deserve to know at all times what we're doing. We are their government, and we only govern because they consent to have us govern them. They have a right to know everything that we do. So making sure they have timely information. And again, that goes to public engagement and providing a variety of different ways and sharing information. Different people have different ways, different needs in terms of how they get information. One size doesn't fit all when it comes to how you communicate with your citizens. Some people like social media and the website and the online presence. Other people aren't connected that way. They like the face-to-face. So they like the public informational meetings either held here. Some of them enjoy us going out into the community and talking to them at various locations, going out into the neighborhoods and talking to them. So we need to understand our audience and tailor our communications to those audiences. So those are some of the ideas that I have. But in terms of my role in communicating, that is really a decision the council has to make.
All right, thank you.
The city manager needs to be very involved in the day-to-day operations of the city. Please describe how your experiences prepared you to hit the ground running and start performing the day-to-day administrative functions of the city.
A very good question. And once again, I have over 30 years of experience as a city and village manager, and managing communities large and small. I have worked with pretty much every municipal operation that you can think of, whether it's the clerk's office, assessing, the attorney's office, human resources, fire, police, EMS, building, planning and zoning. I've worked with boards and commissions. Some of them I've served on. In some of my jobs as city manager, I was actually a voting member of the planning commission. So I think I have a wealth of knowledge, well-rounded knowledge, to be able to jump right in, and it will be the biggest learning curve for me will be simply learning the people who work in the organization. I already have a good idea of the structure. So just learning names and faces, and that is a struggle for me. It takes a few times. But sitting down with people and talking to them. But in terms of being able to jump right in, I don't think there's any problem for me in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
The International City County Management Association Code of Ethics states that managers should refrain from participating in the elections of members of the employing legislative body. If they agree this is unethical for a city manager to get involved in city politics, what do you think an appropriate policy would be for staff participation in city politic campaigns? In other words, should staff be actively and publicly engaged in promoting and opposing candidates for the city council or other elected bodies? And if so, what do you think would be appropriate policy? And what steps would you take to implement a policy like that?
This is a difficult area.
Mm-hmm.
It is because of the city manager's professional code of ethics through ICMA. We cannot be involved either in our official capacity during working hours or after hours. It's different for other employees. I strongly encourage my employees to refrain from involvement in local politics. Nothing good can come of it. But they have a right as citizens to take part in the election process. I do think it is appropriate to have a policy that they cannot be involved in election campaigns or anything having to do with the political process other than in an official capacity in the clerk's office during working hours. That should be prohibited. But it's difficult to tell employees what they can and can't do on their own time. I caution employees that if they get involved in particular campaigns for local elected officials, it creates problems for them politically with our elected officials who are elected and those who lose the election. Our role as administration and my role as city manager is to work with and be able to support and guide and carry out the direction of the council members, the council as a body, no matter who is sitting up there. Equally, without favoritism, I expect the same thing from my employees, that they will treat every elected official with the dignity and respect that comes with that office, that we will be We will freely share information with council members. I do believe it's important that if we get requests for information from individual council members, that information be shared with the rest of the council. But I expect my staff to be able to work with any elected official on the same basis, regardless of what their personal feelings are. But it is difficult to tell employees, if not impossible, to tell employees what they can do on their own time. When they're on the clock, that's a different story. So I think creating a policy that provides clear direction on what the expectations are during working hours, but also being as strong in the encouragement to not get involved in the process even personally is probably the best you can hope for.
Could you please give me an example and also state maybe some experience that you have or how you would go about helping the city capture outside funds via grants or whatever is available out there to help us with our programming and to grow our financial base?
So there are some grant opportunities available. Right now, we're at a time when there's a lot of money coming from the federal government through the ARPA funds, and Clawson's receiving just over $1.2 million in ARPA funding, half of it this year, and then half of it you'll be getting probably September, October of this year. But there are some grant opportunities. It depends on what the needs of the community are. If it's parkland development, there are a number of grant opportunities, the MNRTF grant program, Land and Water Conservation Fund, and some other lesser-known grant programs that are highly competitive. I think this last round, they had $20 million to award through the MNRTF program, and they had something like $60 million in applications. So it's highly competitive. But there are other grant programs available. Again, it depends on what your needs or desires are. I know that SEMCOG has they allow their members to subscribe to the Grant Finder program, so it makes it a lot easier to be able to locate grants. And that's a free service that SEMCOG takes on for communities that are members. So that is a great resource to be able to identify grant opportunities out there on the federal level as well as state level. But I have experience with a number of grants, both in terms of parkland, but also transportation. I'm sure maybe James remembers the old iced tea program that turned into T21, and then now it's the TAP Transportation Alternatives Program is one of those programs that evolved from that. I've worked with the Oakland County Community Development Block Grant Program. I've been responsible for managing that in previous positions. But the federal CRISI grant program I worked on when I was in Ypsilanti. We wanted to reestablish our train depot, our train station in Depot Town. And that was going to take about $3.5 million. So we were preparing a grant application under the CRISI program for that. There's funding available. One of the very few grant funding programs that are available to municipalities for local street improvements is the Michigan Transportation Economic Development Fund, Category B grant funding. It provides $250,000 in grant matching grant funds specifically for local streets. So that is something that the city should be very active in. And I was successful in getting funding through that program for Albion and other communities. Those are just a few examples, but it all depends on what your needs are. But there are resources out there to be able to identify grant program opportunities, and then it becomes a matter of putting your best foot forward and submitting a competitive application.
Thank you.
Please describe the process you would use to both retain and recruit talented staff.
So in terms of retaining staff, it used to be that the financial incentives were the most important thing for municipal employees. That is changing. As we get younger employees coming into the organization, younger employees aren't so much focused on the financial incentives, compensation, fringe benefits. Leave time is actually more important. I can't say more important, but is increasingly important to them. The flexibility to work from home sometimes, the flexibility to spend more time spending time with families, especially if they've got a young family. So that's becoming increasingly important. So being creative in the incentives that you provide, because a lot of them don't have to be financial so much as they have to be addressing the whole needs of individual employees, addressing work-life balance. So that's one of the most important things about retaining good employees. But treating your employees well. As a good city manager is a coach and a mentor, a facilitator, someone who truly cares about his or her employees and gets to know them on an individual basis and gets to know what their individual needs are. And I'm looking at August. I know August is appointed by the council, but I'm sure he works closely with the city manager. But caring about your employees, I think, is one of the most important things. If they feel that they are appreciated, that goes a long way in retaining them. Even sometimes when you can't provide those pay increases because of your tight budget. Being flexible. I know that you've got a 4-day work week here, which is something that is attractive to a lot of municipal employees. And there are still a lot of municipal organizations that haven't caught on to that idea that a lot of employees love those 4-day work weeks, even though they have to work longer hours. And I know there's some history to why you have four-day work weeks here. There was a cut in pay back in 2011 that resulted in that, I believe. But appreciating your employees, letting them know they're appreciated, and that and treating them with dignity and respect, being concerned about not only them but their families. If you can build that type of organization, it's an organization that people will want to stay in. In terms of attracting good talent, there are two parts of recruitment. And as James knows, there are strict legal requirements that we have to comply with when we're doing recruitment and selection. And I've run into this issue in some of my previous positions. We have a constitutional amendment here in Michigan that prohibits us from considering giving consideration to certain certain classes because they are a member of certain classes. It was, I think, more to address the university issues than it was municipal government or state government. But we cannot make hiring decisions based on somebody's protected status. Certain protected statuses. It doesn't cover all of them. So we have to be very careful about that. But what we can do is we can focus on attracting diverse talent by how we advertise for the positions, making sure we are casting a wide net in advertising the positions, reaching out to organizations and entities that represent the interests of minority groups and protected groups. So the advertisement part of it is very, very important. Once you have your applicants, though, you have to look at merit and fitness. Those are the things that you can look at when you're making your hiring decisions, and you really need to be hiring the best candidate for the position. But I think in the advertisement part of the process, reaching out to a diverse applicant pool, presenting the city in the best possible light, letting candidates know that this is a progressive organization to work for, that there's a lot to offer, both in terms of the financial compensation, but like I talked about a little while ago, the non-financial things that show that we care about the employees that we bring on board. So those are a few things that you can do to try to attract a good talent base.
Okay, thank you.
Community involvement is important to the city. Please describe how you would plan to personally become involved in the community.
So I think it's very important for the city manager to be visible at community events, be part of the, volunteer with your downtown development authority or your civic organizations for the events that they put on. Part of it is, I think, making sure that the council is comfortable with whatever organizations the city manager may get involved with, because sometimes there's politics involved in those. So the city manager has to be sensitive to that. But being involved, working with civic organizations, making sure that they have streamlined processes in getting approvals, permit approvals for the events that they want to do. I know that you've got a policy that anything that involves the use of city resources has to come to council for final permit approval. Other things can be done administratively. But making sure that you're sensitive to deadlines that civic organizations have, and working closely with them, sitting down, meeting with them ahead of time, talking to them about what the requirements are so that there's no surprises on their part. But being visible at the events. I feel strongly that it's important for the manager to be a resident of the community. State law prohibits municipalities from requiring employees to live closer than 20 miles from the city limits. But I do believe that that the city manager should be a resident in the community. And if I was fortunate enough to be selected for the position, my husband and I have already talked about this, and we would we would plan to purchase a home and move to the community. We already have family in the community, so it would be nice to be even closer to some of our family members, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson, do you have another question?
Getting close on time.
If you don't, I do.
Okay, yeah, I'd love that closing question and to give the candidates an opportunity.
Okay, if you don't mind.
No.
Okay, thanks. So we'd like to thank you for being here this evening and for answering these questions so aptly. I was wondering if there's anything else that you would like to share with us that we did not address in our questioning that you really feel we need to know about you. And then beyond that, I'd like for you to tell us what is so special about you that would make us want to select you over our other amply qualified candidates.
So, as far as the first question, I think you did a pretty good job of providing some well-rounded questions. I think my experience, my years of experience, and my depth, breadth, and scope of experience, I think will serve you well. I am a strong city manager. I will give information to you directly. I will let you know what my professional opinion is on matters, respectfully. But you will know what I'm thinking. You will know what my recommendations are. Another one of the documents I presented to you is how I like to present items to the council in a council action summary sheet with everything laid out for you, so you'll know what I'm thinking on different issues. But I also respect the role of the council. You, as a body, are my boss. I take direction from you. I am here to guide you and to be a support to you in what you need to do. But I do pride myself on being a strong and decisive city manager. As far as what makes me better than the other candidates, I'm not sure I am the best candidate. I know who the other candidates are. Most of them I don't know personally. I only know one of them personally. And so I may not be the best candidate. I don't know. So I can't answer that question. The only thing I can say to you is that I hope that you will consider the answers that I've given to you tonight and my more than 30 years of experience as a city manager, my ability to jump into the position immediately. I would be available on a very, very short time frame to be able to start work. And because of my knowledge and experience, it would be a very, very short learning curve. And I already know what you've been doing for the past 2 years, so there aren't any surprises to me. So, but one of the other candidates may be better.
I'm pretty sure we could surprise you. And probably in a good way, right? So thank you so much for coming in today. We are going to take a very brief break, and then we will be back with our next candidate, Mr. Ken Martin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, council. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Okay, we are back, and we have with us Mr. Ken Martin. We are going to start off with questions right from the get-go. We want to
Okay.
thank you for being with us tonight, and we promise this will not be painful.
Okay.
I think it will be uneventful. Well, eventful, sorry. First question, oh, sorry, I didn't turn off, good, because probably a good thing. Okay, so we have Ken Martin with us here. I'll repeat myself in case you couldn't hear me. Welcome, glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
The first question I have for you is, what made you interested in serving in the city of Clawson at this particular time in your career and in the status of our events?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. It was a pleasure to get the call from James in the first place that I was interested.
Yeah, yours is not on.
Needs to be closer?
It's just not, we just can't hear it very well.
How's that? No? Better? I mean, it's pretty sensitive. Anyway,
Yeah, I think you're fine.
okay.
You're good, yeah.
All right, so, again, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to get the call from James to interview for the position in the first place. So, for myself right now, I would say I am looking to move on to a community that's a little larger than where I work today. I'm a village manager in Bingham Farms. It's a small suburb. And it's a quiet place. I enjoy it, but I would like a little more responsibility. I'd like to move to a community that's a little more active. Not action, but active and interaction. So for me, I mean, this is the right time for me to make a move from that community to Clawson or another one, frankly. Not sure how that intersects with your needs, but aside from the fact that you need somebody to be your city manager, I do know Clawson fairly well. I've known it for a long time. I have relatives that live here still, and back in my newspaper days, I worked for a chain that covered the community. So, that's back to Joe Marucci was your city manager at that time, and Barbara Seppi was the mayor. It goes back to the early 2000s, I believe.
What newspaper?
The Mirror.
Okay, curious. Thank you.
One of the great strengths of the city is its traditional community feel and access to major metropolitan area. How has your professional experience prepared you to build on this city's strength, and what would you do to further this positive aspect of the community?
Well, I'm not sure how to build on it, to be quite frank with you. I'm not sure. I mean, it is centrally located, that's for sure. Excuse me. You have some sort of a brochure out in your lobby that speaks to that, and that's great. I know that your downtown has grown quite a bit from sleepy to vibrant over the years. That goes back to my Mirror days. So. I mean, it's a great magnet now, maybe the answer is to get out of the way and let the DDA continue with what it's doing. I know Joan Horton from my time as a DDA director in Lathrop Village, and I think she does a pretty outstanding job.
Okay.
Well, based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach them?
I think the city needs some stability, to be quite frank with you. I know you've gone through quite a few city managers and quite a few clerks, and I would like to be the person that offers that stability to you. I'm 54. I feel like I am mature enough to ride ebbs and flows, ups and downs, and keep a steady hand on your city's tiller, so to speak. Quite frankly, among city managers, Clawson is kind of getting a bad reputation for a place that's hard to work, hard to stay, anyway, and I'd like to help you fix that.
Okay, thank you.
There's a little on the OMA. A former city manager told me the story how he used to take the entire city council into a conference room and talked to them how they needed to vote. When they went out of chambers, they knew how to vote, and it usually was unanimous. Tell me your thoughts on this practice. What are your concerns might you have with this method of reaching consensus?
Let me rephrase that to make sure that I understand what you're saying. The city manager would take the council into a room
Conference room.
and tell them how to vote and why they should vote that way? And that's how he built consensus? Is that what you're saying?
But when they came out, they all knew how to vote, and it was always unanimous.
That's not a practice that I'm used to following. The city council sets a policy, and the city manager sees that policy is carried out. I mean, advice is important, but that sounds like a city manager just used to whip people into shape. I'm more interested in having a dialogue with people, I guess. And certainly, it's sort of, I mean, there's a closed session issue that you're getting at with that too. I mean, these conversations have to happen in the open. You can't call people away. There are certain reasons to have a closed session, that's for sure. But not every little issue needs a closed session. Those decisions need to be made in the public. So I would shy away from that practice.
Please describe in detail your approach to municipal budgeting, including the process you will use to communicate important budget objectives to the city council.
Well, I can tell you how we do it now in Bingham Farms. The treasurer is responsible for putting the budget together. I, as the manager, sit on the budget subcommittee with her. We talk about the budget all the time, but she actually puts it together and presents it. That's right out of the village charter. You probably have a slightly different process here. I would imagine that your finance director and your treasurer, if you have both, would probably work in tandem with the city manager or work in concert with the city manager. I would probably do the same thing. I would probably recommend the same thing as far as creating a subcommittee. Would not be a majority of you, would be a minority of you to be on that subcommittee as well. And then you would be updated with in the process, meeting by meeting, public meeting by public meeting. And there are public hearings that are involved as well. I think that keeps people in the loop pretty well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What do you see as the city manager's role in communicating with the press and public, and how specifically do you plan to be successful in communicating with the public?
Communication skills, frankly, is one of my strong suits, maybe the strongest. Communication leads to understanding. Communication leads to agreement. Communication leads to consensus, compromise. I mean, that's really important. Staying engaged, staying visible, and responding to your stakeholders in a timely fashion is really critical. I can't imagine a function that doesn't come off more day to day more so than that. It's critical. It really is, and there are various messages, or various platforms that meaning your website and phone calls and emails and all that kind of stuff. It's really important, and that's something that I've always been on top of.
Okay. The city manager needs to be very involved in the day-to-day operations of the city. Please describe how your experience has prepared you to hit the ground running and start performing the day-to-day administrative functions of the city.
Well, a lot of communities are run very similarly. You have the city manager and you have a bunch of department heads that run the departments, or you have contracted services, contracts with services that run those things. So for instance, in Bingham Farms, just so you're all aware, I call it the community of contracts, because we are a small community and all of our city services or village services or municipal services are contracted out to other communities or private concerns. So in my case, I'm managing contracts more so than I'm managing people. But I'm in constant contact with with the heads of those departments. So in other words, the police chief and the fire chief and a building official and the librarian over at the Baldwin Public Library, where we have a contract for library services. You have, those people know what they're doing, running their departments, and you have to allow them a certain amount of leeway. You can't micromanage. It's when problems come up, that's when the conversations with those department heads begin. So, I mean, this job and many jobs are all about what I call PSI, pounds per square inch. It's really, but it's not that, it's identifying, solving, and preventing problems. That's what you do. But also, the department heads, they know that too, and that's what their job is. So it's sort of, again, it's an in tandem situation. You know, it's not a dictatorial thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the International City County Management Association's Code of Ethics states that a manager should refrain from participating in the election of members of its employing legislative body. So if it is unethical for a city manager to get involved with political campaigns, what do you think is an appropriate policy for staff participation in either political campaigns? In other words, should staff be actively or publicly engaged in promoting opposing candidates for the city or other elected bodies? And if not, what do you think an appropriate policy would be, and what steps would you take to implement it?
I would say that staff should not be involved in campaigns for city council members or wannabes, or candidates, I should say. And I would prefer that they not. I mean, that might be a question that we would have to discuss with the city attorney to get a clear answer. But I would prefer that not occur. I mean, we do not want people backing various factions. We don't want two different police officers backing two different people for council, for example. I mean, to me, that just lends itself to bad blood.
Please describe the process you would utilize to both retain and recruit talented staff.
Well, I guess I would first see what is needed before we begin recruiting people. But job descriptions and a discussion with department heads would be certainly have to occur. Then we would probably create those job descriptions and utilize probably the MML website for advertisement. That's for recruitment. For retention, I would certainly want to. I'm a big advocate of training, and I'd like to see where everyone is in terms of training in their jobs, and have a career conversation with folks and see where they want to go with things. If advancement within the city is their goal, see what we can do. If advancement elsewhere is their goal, well, I wouldn't kick anybody out, but I certainly would want to help them get to where they want to be. And that's where the career conversation comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Community involvement is important to the city. Please describe how you would plan to personally become involved in the community.
One of the things that I did in Bingham Farms, this is not an original thing. I lifted this from other city managers. I created a lecture series called Local Government 101, and had people sign up. And it was a series of 4 lectures every other week, and we discussed. Or I lectured, and they asked questions about how the village runs. Frankly, it went over really well. That's one thing I would do. Engagement, visibility, and engagement is really important. So, I mean, I could see attending a lot of extra meetings, at least right away, until I get a feel of things. I could see myself out and about in the community quite a bit. Any activities, I would be willing to show up and be a part of those, whether it's participation or just being like an audience member or an attendee. It's really kind of endless, but that kind of goes back to the communication element too. I mean, visibility and accessibility, I think, is really important. People need to see that you're part of the community as a city manager, even if you're not, a 30-year resident or something like that. People need to see that you're invested in it as an employee of the city.
Okay, what would you consider an essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council? And how will you facilitate a productive relationship with city council?
I think trust is really important. That's essential. If there's no trust, I think you're usually shown the door pretty quickly. So we would start out in the right foot. I would like to have a series of conversations with the city council. Everyone would get to know each other, certainly, or get to know me, I guess I should say. You all know each other pretty well, I would assume. Again, that's another element to communication. I mean, that needs to happen. I write a weekly memo that I share with council every Friday. We have a 5-day work week. I could adjust to that, by the way. But yeah, I write a weekly memo, I share it with council. It's part of my we have monthly meetings. It's part of my monthly report. I would hope that would be one of the seeds that would build that trust.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, here's how do you handle the scenario? You have a department head that regularly makes reports to the city council to provide council with information necessary for council decisions. The employee repeatedly failed to provide information council requested and needed for analysis and decision-making. This culminated in a council vote of no confidence in that employee. How would you handle that situation?
I would want to have a conversation with that employee to make sure that the information that is being requested, as long as it's being requested properly and that employee's department is responsible for it, make sure that's accurate, first of all. Then I'd have a conversation to see, what's the problem here. If dismissal is the ultimate answer to that scenario, I would have to disagree with it. I think there's got to be room for an improvement before we get to that point. What's the problem? Why are you not supplying the information? Perhaps we could get to the bottom of it. Maybe it's just maybe it's just a conversation again. Maybe it's a lack of training on the city's behalf as far as that employee is concerned. I mean, we don't know yet. There's a lot of hypotheticals in the scenario, but I would certainly want to get to the bottom of it.
Okay. Please describe a situation when you disagreed with your governing board. And then how did you approach that difference of opinion? And please explain the final result of the situation. Or make one up.
No.
Because it may have never happened.
So I prepared some remarks about some accomplishments, but not things that didn't happen. Here. The city of Southfield handles Bingham Farms building and permitting. And building permits cost money, as you all probably know. The village of Bingham Farms sees none of that. They never have. This has gone back to the Kennedy administration, maybe even before that. So I would like the council to pass an ordinance that would establish collection of fees that Southfield would collect on our behalf, on the village's behalf, maybe 5% of the total permit. And then on a quarterly basis, pay it back, or pay us in the village. And the reason is because a lot of staff time, a lot of my time, is taken up with building projects. People calling, asking questions all the time about various things, preparing for meetings and whatnot that relate to building projects. And that compensation is legitimate, but we don't have it. Council was afraid that people would be upset that building permits would be increased. So for a year, that was in 2019, all of 2020, the year of COVID, I kept track of my hours, my time, as well as the administrative assistant kept track of his time, so that we could show council how many hours or how much of our time has been taken up with building and why the compensation is necessary. So we were rejected at first, and try to come up with a better way to skin the cat, and we'll see what happens. When we present that information to council and ask them maybe to reconsider, perhaps an ordinance to establish a small fee would be in order. We'll see. But it's trying to overcome adversity by a long-term analysis, because we spent a year doing this.
Thank you.
If someone were to do a Google search of you, what would they find regarding your past public positions? And is there any information or background you would like to provide regarding the publicly available information about you?
Well, I used to freelance, so I'm sure, and write. I was a writer for the newspaper for many years, and then I freelanced for many years. So you would find, if you dug deep enough, lots of articles floating around by Ken Martin, lots of different things. I am a musician, so you would find reference to me playing around different venues and whatnot. I am on the Detroit Blues Society Board of Directors, and I'm on the Ukrainian American Center Foundation Board of Directors. You definitely find references to those things, in addition to probably a few references to Bingham Farms. But honestly, my position in Bingham Farms is, Bingham doesn't get a lot of media attention. It's just too small. Most people don't even know where it is. You don't even know you pass through it. So, it's not. As far as I know, the C&G newspaper did an article about me when I started in 2018 in that community, and I was quoted in a New Year's resolution article a year ago, maybe, and I might have been quoted in an article about a PUD that was sort of controversial. There's not much else there. So, but going back a little further, I will reveal to you that in 2005, I pled guilty to a driving while impaired in Royal Oak. And that if someone dug deep enough, I'm sure that would pop up somewhere. I believe in the preliminary search with James, I think that you go back, it's a 7-year look back or something like that. So that's obviously much more than 7 years, but that's out there. And that might cause some embarrassment if I didn't reveal it now. So there you are.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, if selected as the city manager, please tell us how you would approach building trust and respect of the elected officials, employees, and the community.
I kind of feel like I answered that already, but I'll say it again.
These questions are very overlapping, so yes, don't feel bad about repeating yourself.
Okay, all right. Well, again, I mean, communication is really important. I mean, I envision, having a series of meetings with various departments. COVID, as long as COVID allows for that, I would want to meet all these folks and talk with all the department heads and as well. I mean, the city manager has to be accessible to everybody. But you got to be careful not to overrun the chain of command. I mean, you don't want to have to tell people, well, just skip your manager and come right to me. So you got to be careful about that. Again, the communication is really, I hate to say it over and over again, but it's really important. And I feel like accessibility and engagement really leads to building positive bonds.
All right, thank you.
I'll-
How much time do we have?
You have time for a couple more.
That's what I
Go
thought.
ahead, you have always a good one.
Okay.
We've just about
Do you have
asked
another
everything.
one? that you'd
Oh,
like to
yeah, I
ask?
have my.
Go ahead and ask another one. and then-
bunch of
No,
my
I'm not
own.
trying to defer. I'm just saying I'll save one, but I could ask another one too.
Well, I'd like
I
to,
have plenty.
I'd like to know more about the PUD, but I think it's
Right.
maybe a little
Yeah,
bit.
for
in
or
the weeds.
against the PUD?
Pardon me?
Were you for or against the PUD?
So
It doesn't matter if I'm for or against it. All that matters is that what council and what planning commission passes, I have to,
See, nice, good answer.
thank you.
All right. So, we'll just kind of leave that there.
Okay.
Just full disclosure, I was a planning commissioner, so. that's a-
As was I.
Yes. What would you do as city manager to help differentiate Clawson from neighboring communities in southeast Michigan?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, Clawson is pretty unique in and of itself. Maybe that needs to be heightened in some fashion. You know, I have all these great ideas for other places that I didn't get jobs at. I always thought that I don't know how much, like, well, that's too hypothetical. I don't want to go down that road. I guess I'd have to kind of kick stuff around a little bit, talk to people before we actually maybe hone in on a PR campaign like that. I don't want to jump in. I wouldn't jump into it too blindly, or too. That needs to be analyzed before I would do it. But I mean, I can't see why something like that wouldn't hurt. I mean, this is the little city with the big heart kind of works, but I think it's little city. Anyway, I mean but your downtown is really cute. I mean, it's just. It's cute. It's fun. I mean, it's vibrant. My wife and I ate at that Italian restaurant that starts with a Z the other day. Good place. Eating at Pumachug. I mean, gosh. I mean, there's got to be something would be done, but I'm not sure what it would be offhand. I don't want to rebrand if people are happy with the brand that we have now. But it could be heightened in some fashion
Okay.
or enhanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question. I'm looking at the background of Bingham Farms. You had an organization budget of 2.1 million and 3 employees. Coming to
4.
Clawson, 4?
Yeah. Sorry, it's me and well, I'm counting myself. But
3 plus 1.
Okay,
Okay, makes
yeah.
4. Gotcha. As city manager here in Clawson, you'd be stepping up to a budget, I think, around 19 million and about 42 employees. That's like a full order of magnitude, 10 times larger. How would you have to personally make an adjustment to stepping up, not almost like 2 tiers in an organization?
I thought it was 9 million. 9.4.
Okay, no, sorry.
Okay.
All right, all right.
Still a lot more money.
I misspoke, yes,
So
I'm
how?
not.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I would have to ramp up to a degree. That's for sure. As I mentioned earlier, I manage contracts more than I manage people. But I used to work with more. I used to manage more people, and I would like to get back to that. To be honest with you, I have a stable situation, but again, it's kind of lonely, and I would like to be more working with a larger team. So there's no question that would require some ramp up, no question at all. As for the budget. You have a bigger financial staff than I do, and so I don't find that I don't think that there's, and it's the same kind of procedure, getting the budget approved and monitoring and keeping a lid on excessive spending. I mean, that's all the same. It's just the number switches a little bit. So I don't see that as being a detriment. I really don't. As for the employees. Part of that is relying on your department heads as well. I mean, those people, again, they're experts. Presumably, they know what they're doing, and I would like to rely on them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sampson?
Good.
Okay, so Councilmember Anderson increased our budget by about $10 million in the last sentence, which was really
Sorry, I
great.
misspoke. 919.
No, this is good. It's a good segue, I would like to say.
Because you're hoping to make it 19 someday, right?
Well, I'm hoping that you give me a great answer for this right here.
All right.
So, grants and other funding availability, what experience do you have in trying to find other outside sources for funding that we don't have coming in through our normal traditional sources?
Well, certainly grant writing is part of the process, part of my job. That's true. Grants for recycling initiatives, grants for tree planting. I don't know if you would call the ARPA fund a grant, but ours is $120,000. I know yours is 1.6 or something.
Small compared to the ones that are out there.
Compared to the 28 million that Royal Oak received, yeah, it is small. But it's a lot large, but small is relative.
We'll take it,
It's a lot
yeah.
larger than 120,
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So, I do have experience with that, but that's another thing that, I mean, you don't want your city manager sitting just surfing the web all day looking for grant opportunities. There's got to be a staff for that, right?
So if there's not a staff for that, right, this is a lean community. I would say most people do a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So I guess part of my question, I'm just going to expound on it, I haven't done
Mm-hmm.
this with anyone else, but how would you ensure that that was part of what's being done on a regular basis? And not just through you, but, are you going to delegate to staff? And I know I've had the responsibility of doing this. You can spend all day looking online and not find that one
Mm-hmm. Right.
fit for you, right?
Yeah.
But it's still really critical. So, because we need to capture every opportunity we have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have experience in that? Like, how would you delegate? How would you put some importance into it, or would you just say
Absolutely.
time isn't worth it?
No, absolutely. Here's something that perhaps wasn't mentioned in what you just said. I receive, it's a sign up simply for all kinds of updates from state authorities. So I got an email today from Eagle, Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, it's from the state. So the email was grant opportunities for recycling. And it was 10 pages long, read through it. What I'm interested in doing, and this is extremely preliminary because I just got it today, they're offering grants for food waste composting. I know some communities do this, and right now my wife and I, we pay to have this done. We pay $13 a month to have. We get a bucket, and every week all of our food scraps go into that bucket and it's collected. We pay privately for that, so not that much money really. But this is something that's happening now. Communities are recycling in this fashion. So that's something that Bingham Farms perhaps could do, so that my wheels start turning. So what I would do is I would certainly. I would if I started here, I would take that email address and I would plug it in, and I would get those notices. I mean, that's important. I mean, it's not just Eagle either, but there's all the other, Department of Transportation and Department of Education. Not that I have to deal with that, but I mean, they all have grant opportunities, and they it's their job partly to solicit those things. That's why they send out the emails. I would definitely sign up for those and continue that practice. And look for those opportunities. I would also maybe emphasize that that's something that some of the employees need to do too. Some of the department heads might want to assign that to somebody else within the department, but as it applies to that department, I mean, I'm sure that the police chief has either he or someone in the police department is looking at grants for police departments. He must be behind me, right?
He is.
He's going up on you now.
The other option, as far as revenue goes, I mean, I don't know how often this is can be sort of a dirty word, but I mean, some of your permits, maybe the fees need to be raised. I mean, that's something to look at. An example of one of my proudest achievements in Bingham Farms, we did not have a business license program. So we looked into it, suggested it to council. They thought it was a good idea. We initiated an ordinance that started a business license program. So on Telegraph Road in Bingham Farms, there are like 30 office buildings. And nobody knew until 2019, who was working in those office buildings. We don't know what firms are in there. We don't know anything. There's 390 companies located in Bingham Farms. So to ensure zoning compliance, to figure out what the workday population was, and for the sake of police and fire, we decided to start this this business license program. So it's $50 for your initial license, and then it's $30 to renew annually. That's a lot of dollars, but it's also a legitimate revenue source. I mean, it absolutely is. Now, I know you have a business license program here. I think it's $35, which is fine. But, so that's not maybe an option. But there might be some other elements of permitting or revenue raising that haven't been explored, and maybe we could do that.
Okay.
It's not something I do day one. I mean, you need, you walk into a place, you need some time to figure out how you can throw your weight around, frankly. Takes a while.
Okay, so we've asked you a myriad of questions, and wondering if there's anything that you would like to share with us that we didn't address in one of the questions. And then after that, if you could tell us why we should select you for this as our candidate.
So what kind of, this maybe is really open-ended, I'm not sure who would answer it, but what kind of leader are you looking for? I mean, you've had several in the last several years that probably didn't work out so well. What are you looking for?
Strong.
Strong?
Look for strong, yeah.
Okay. Inflexible?
Yeah, that would be key too.
Inflexible.
No, flexible.
Okay, all right.
Flexible.
I said inflexible.
Oh, I didn't
Let's
hear
make
that
sure
part.
that we were on the same
No,
page.
it's like, were you, one small step for a man, right? Is that a?
Right. Anybody else?
I would like someone with, that's able to lead well, that's considerate of others, that leads by example, that is able to communicate to people at all levels of the organization, someone who is willing to get in and do anything anyone else does, and I think you can usually tell those people from the beginning, and someone who has some financial knowledge and a little bit of knowledge of the structure of a community. You said the right answer is what a city manager is supposed to do, right? They're supposed to be the figurehead of the community. They're supposed to be the representative for this body and then enact what is put out, but they also have to be able to manage the department heads, which means they have to have some knowledge. I wouldn't expect you to be a finance expert, but I would hope that you would have financial acumen, right? I wouldn't expect you to be a DPW director, but I would expect you to know, what transpires in those departments as well, and then also understand the importance of our library and our community center and all of those things. So it's a lot to ask for one person, which is why it's a very unique position overall in the career spectrum. So from my standpoint, those are the things I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you.
I'd say a leader with high energy that likes to get involved.
Okay, good.
Well, I think what I'm kind of looking for in your position, I mean, you're going to manage a fairly large number of employees, so you have to be able to delegate at that level, and yet, of course, you account to the council. So, to me, it's always a very tricky balancing act. At one hand, you serve at the pleasure of the council. The other hand, you have to run this city. It's not our job to run it, it's yours. But yeah, just being able to negotiate that. Again, I mentioned the size. Of course, I upped our budget just to get everything excited.
Yeah.
But forgive my, I'm the new guy. Forgive
Maybe
my
I shouldn't have called you
misspeaking.
out on that, I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. But no, hey, that's a great thing to do. When council makes a mistake, you need to correct them. We're not demigods up here. We're just here to supervise and that. So I appreciate many of the responses you gave us, and I
Sure.
appreciate your candor.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you all. Is there some element of what you said earlier that I failed to address? Did you, oh, you
I
want to
wasn't
know why I should be
implying
hired?
that you did not fail. This is yours. We ask the questions, you answer from whom
Yeah.
you are and where you are, and we're
Right.
comfortable with that, right? So if you gave a broad answer, great. If you didn't, also great. That's you, right? Like, we're trying to get to know you and see
Right.
how you would react in a situation. So if you're comfortable with everything that you said and you were asked all the questions you wanted to be asked, and you're comfortable just knowing what we're looking for, I'm fine. I just would like to offer you the opportunity that if there was something that you came in with that you really wanted to share about yourself, about you personally, and clearly you say you're a great communicator, and I get that. I get you have some energy. If there's something that's missing in the questions that were asked, I would really like you to have the opportunity to share with us prior to leaving, and then not get in the car and go, darn it, I wish they would have asked me. I wish
said,
I could have said this, because I know you're bigger than 45 minutes, so I just want to give you that opportunity.
Yeah.
Not
Well-
a chastisement at all, just an encouragement
Right.
to sell yourself.
Well, thank you.
Should you choose.
Well, I can't say that we didn't maybe touch on everything to some degree, but if I could just reiterate that the fact that I have, my communication skills are probably one of my strongest assets. And I'm fairly resourceful, fairly creative, and hopefully that came out in the questions that I answered to you all. But also, I mean, you know, this whole concept of PSI which I just made up by my own. I didn't read it anywhere. But the whole thing about preventing, solving, and identifying problems, I mean, that's really what this job is all about. And, you know, together, that is council and the manager and the staff, I mean, those things can be handled. So, anyway, I really appreciate you guys allowing me to come up here and move the microphone around a little bit. And it was a pleasure. If I don't even get a call back, it was still a pleasure.
Well,
I
I-
love this town, so, thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to say that I do appreciate your willingness to ask questions. I think that's a really good sign, because that's part of the job as well, right?
Yeah.
For all of us, if you don't ask questions, you don't get the information, you can't move on. So thank you for being willing to do that with us tonight, too.
Sure.
So we really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'll escort the candidate out, and then we're going to test the Zoom.
Okay.
If we can take 5 minutes.
Okay? We'll take 10 minutes.
Zoom meeting,
Zoom, one Zoom.
Okay, we are back. We are going to meet with Mr. Joseph Rucker. He is virtual. We are present. He's present there, we're present here, and we're happy to have him there, and we're happy to be here. So we're going to start this off with the first question, which is, Mr. Rucker, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your interest in the city of Clawson. I'm interested in knowing what made you interested in serving for the city of Clawson at this point in your life and at this point in the condition of the city of Clawson, which is actually in very good shape. Just curious what would be a draw for you to come here?
Yes, ma'am. So first, thank you for being flexible and allowing me to interview virtually. On Monday, I became COVID positive. I tested positive, and for about 60 hours, it was pure misery. So I'm on the mend, and I'm quarantined until tomorrow morning. So I appreciate your understanding. As far as my interest in the position, well, I'm a naval reservist, as you probably know from my resume. And the reason why I'm in the Navy Reserve is because I found that being on active duty wasn't conducive to maintaining the family relationships that I wanted to. And so as such, I applied the same philosophy that I would like to be physically near my family. So this job is geographically desirable. So in its purest, most direct form for me, the opportunities such as these for city manager positions in this area, they don't come by often, and so it's a very desirable opportunity, which I'd like to pursue at this point in my career. As far as this time with what's going on in the city, I think you are alluding to perhaps some board dynamics. And I've done some research as far as looking at some of the previous city council meetings and just kind of understanding some of the history there. And so, I kind of chalk it up to a professional challenge as far as the people that work in public service. We're all drawn to public service for some type of noble reason. And I would ask that, going forward, should I be the city manager, that we all try to reconnect with that reason and respect each other's reasons for that. So I think that is the driving factor professionally as to why I want to be the city manager in Clawson at this time.
Thank you.
If you could, please outline your reasons why you will be exceptional as the next city manager of Clawson.
Exceptional is a very powerful word. So I'm aware of who the other candidates are, and I actually consider one a mentor. So I can't compare myself to that person or the other individuals, but I think I would be exceptional standout just by fact of my military service and experience. That makes me very, it doesn't make me rigid, but it makes me disciplined. It makes me deferential, and it provides a work ethic, and I think motivation that you won't necessarily see in the other candidates.
Okay, thank you.
Well, one of the great strengths of the city is its traditional community feel and access to the major metropolitan area. How has your professional experience prepared you to build on this city's strength, and what would you do to further this positive aspect of the community?
Yeah, certainly your geographic location within Oakland County, your neighbors of Troy and Royal Oak put you in a very strong position. I have one of my cousins lives over on Selfridge in Clawson, fantastic neighborhood. So I think sustaining that obviously is first and foremost, and I think it's probably I don't want to be dismissive and say it's easy, but I think it's natural for the community. And so I think my strengths of being able to kind of distinguish, hey, it's not broke doesn't need to be fixed, but also my communication strengths as far as querying staff and not just staff, but you as the council and the mayor, staff and residents as to quickly trying to identify what are the priorities that the community and council would like to address, and do our best to quickly put some points on the board and at the same time potentially collaborate with the strengths of our neighbors.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just looked at your resume. Do you mind if I use your first name?
Not at all, sir.
All right, Captain. Congratulations on your selection as 06.
Thank you very much, sir.
Most remarkable thing. It's not many people that do that and to get appointed by the Congress. So, first question we got is former city manager once told me a story that he used to take the entire council into a conference room, told them how they needed to really vote, and then he went back out in the council chambers, and the council usually voted unanimously. Tell me your thoughts on that practice. What concerns might you have with this method of reaching a consensus?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily be taking all of council behind closed doors and telling them what to do. My job would be to, in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, disperse information in a timely fashion to everyone, and also to provide professional recommendations and rationale as to what the administration's recommendation would be.
Good. Thank you. Please describe in detail your approach to municipal budgeting, including the process you will use to communicate important budget objectives to the city council.
And so I think one of the first things I would do, should I be your city manager, is identify some of the priorities that you as a body feel are important, so that we can get those incorporated into the budget. So then there's the budget prep, there's review, there's the review and adoption of the budget. There's the implementation, and then there's the evaluation and refinement. So it's kind of an ongoing process. I mean, in whether it's the actual budget itself or it's a budget amendment, those four components are all equally in play and important. So getting your feedback as to what the priorities are and being able to demonstrate that their inclusion in a budget, and then also providing you feedback on a recurring basis as to what progress is on those priorities. I believe that would be my approach to budgeting. And I would start off with not just getting the priorities from staff and council, but I would allow the department heads very much so to be included in developing their department budgets.
Thank you.
Based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach these?
I don't know. I can't say that I know exactly what the challenges and the opportunities are. I mean, it seems like a very stable community. You have a healthy fund balance. I think what it is, the greatest opportunities, I think, is bringing council together, coalescing around issues that you mutually agree upon and that are important to your constituents, and addressing those issues and showing progress on them.
Okay, thank you.
What do you see as the city manager's role in communicating with the press and public? And how specifically do you plan to be successful in communicating with the public?
Well, it would be my preference that, I mean, when it comes to the successes of the city, obviously that goes to the mayor and council, and we coordinate those so that the equitable benefit is there for everyone to be a part of. when it comes to the negative, that should be my responsibility, and I would inform you of that in a timely fashion if there were ever to be any negative press coming forward. And I think when it comes to the negative, I'm the face of what is negative and bringing the bad news and making those explanations. But when it comes to the positive and promotion of the city, I believe it's the mayor and the council's responsibility and privilege to deliver that news. And I would do my best to make sure that when those opportunities present themselves, that it is delivered in that fashion. The one thing I did notice, and while I was on the website, is that the quarterly newsletter, there was a newsletter, and there was one from January 2020 that was very brief, 5 pages. I mean, like 38 pages from 2020, and then there was one from January this year, which is only 5 pages. So I'm not sure if there is a breakdown in kind of a standard periodical like that. But getting something like that back online would be important. And then again, when it comes to the positive, that's for the council and mayor to deliver and benefit from. And when it comes to the negative, that's for me to absorb and share and proactively share with you in advance of things becoming public.
Thank you.
The International City County Management Association Code of Ethics states that managers should refrain from participation in election bodies in the election of members of the employee legislative body. If so, is it unethical? So it's unethical for a city manager to get involved in the city political campaigns. What do you think an appropriate policy for your staff participation in city politics and campaigns? In other words, should staff be actively, publicly engaged in promoting and opposing candidates for the city or other elected bodies?
Well, I think when it comes to that, if there were perhaps through their unions, if there was an endorsement that way, I would say that is the union prerogative, I should say, to potentially publicly endorse somebody. I would explain and I would try to put together some type of guidelines or guidance with council support that, if someone lives in the city and they're an employee, I think they absolutely maintain their right and privilege to in their off hours, participate in the political process. However, I think it should be a policy of the city that if you're an employee here and not resident in your off time, and certainly not at all on your on time, should there be any political involvement.
Okay, as it is essential for the city manager to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the city, would you please describe how your experience has prepared you to hit the ground running and start performing the day-to-day administrative functions of the city? And additionally, I'm really interested to know what your management style would be.
So we have 2 ears and one mouth, so I do twice as much listening and half the amount of talking. So I know it sounds cliche, but we say this all the time in the military, having an open door policy. I believe that whoever has the best mousetrap, we're all on the same team. So let's use each other's ideas to progressively get better as an organization. I'm inclusive. I like people to grow in their jobs, in their capacity, in their skill sets. I'm a big believer in investing in our workforce. And so I believe I'm approachable, but I'm not afraid to make a tough decision, and I'm not afraid to have to lend a hand to somebody, whether it is a department head working on something technical, or just having be the sounding board for whatever may be going on in their four walls at home. So I think my reputation is that I'm available and a good listener.
Thank you.
please describe the process you would use to both retain and recruit talented staff?
As I just mentioned, I'm a firm believer in the investment of in our workforce. Workforce development, I think, is absolutely paramount in retention. Also, for years now, there's been this thing in public service known as the silver tsunami, where so many people in public service are leaving the workforce. And just with the current state of affairs with politics in general, whether at the national level on down to the local level, we have to make sure that we have the trust of not just our constituents, but also the trust of our employees, so that they understand, hey, when they come to work, they're looking forward going to work. Everyone comes to work and everyone goes home. So meaning everyone comes to work knowing that they have a job, and everyone goes home knowing that we operate safely, so that at the end of the workday, everyone's going home to their loved ones.
Okay, thank you.
Well, community involvement is important to the city. Please describe how you would plan to personally become involved in the community.
Well, I mean, I think if I were so fortunate to be appointed as city manager, I would sit down with each one of you and ask you, could you please provide a list of stakeholders, people that you believe I should reach out to, organizations that I should reach out to and become involved with. And I would like to establish something like that and get it done in a realistic time frame, so that I can immerse myself in the community as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, we got how would you handle a scenario? You have a department head that regularly makes reports to the city council and provides council with information necessary for council decisions. That employee repeatedly failed to provide information council requested and needed for analysis and decision-making. This culminated in a city council vote of no confidence in that employee. How would you handle that situation after?
So I would make the assumption, let me operate with some contextual understanding here, that I would be aware that this employee makes routine information provision to council. I would imagine that council is at least reasonable enough that if it were to happen the first time, that we're not immediately losing confidence in this person. And so I would have to kind of understand more of the protocols as to why this person is providing that direct information. And if that is the case, then I would be involved in making sure that it gets to the council in a timely fashion, and without repetition of this happening. So on my watch, I can't envision that happening.
There you go.
Would you please describe a situation where you've disagreed with your governing board, and let us know how you approach the differences of opinion, and perhaps give an example of a final result in a situation?
So basically something I put on an agenda and the council voted no on it. I don't think I have anything like that, but I will recall a certain backside chewing I received from council. It was an internal miscommunication as to the amount of I believe it was tasers we were to acquire in 1 year's time. The purchase was mistakenly made to make all of them at a cost savings in one time instead of over 3 years. That additional purchase power saved us $3,000. However, it fell on deaf ears by council because I mistakenly had asked them to, and part of it was my messaging too. I had mistakenly asked them to vote on something that, had already been. I should have simply made a memo for the record explaining the situation. I naively asked council to vote on something that had already basically didn't have a choice in the matter, and that did not brief well at all. And so looking back, I should have simply made it a memorandum for the record, made sure they were all well informed about the mistake. So what had happened there is I basically was taking my lumps for quite a while publicly, and then I finally had to say it. I finally had to ask: does everyone receive their pint of blood and pound of flesh? I've very clearly articulated that I made a mistake. It was to the financial benefit over time to the city, and actually it operationally benefited the city as well.
Thank you.
What do you consider as essential in the relationship between a city manager and a city council, and how will you facilitate a productive relationship with city council?
I think it's trust, plain and simple. It's trust. It's building a relationship, a professional relationship, and based on the fact that, hey, you're hiring somebody that you have a professional faith in, and when they're telling you something or sharing information with you, or actually in some instances where there is an absence of information or a lapse of time, that you have the confidence in me and the administration that there is some reason behind this. And as soon as positive contact can be made, an explanation will be provided. So maintaining trust and remaining unemotional, especially in these times where sometimes it's your board dynamics, then also in this day and age of immediate keyboard jockeying on social media. So it's important that at the end of the day, or whatever issue, that professionally we maintain our trust in each other, so that so that we're not an embarrassment publicly for our constituents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, speaking of social media, if someone were to do a Google search of you, what would they find regarding your past public positions? Is there any information or background you'd like to provide regarding the publicly available information about you?
Can I Google myself real quick?
Like you never.
I don't believe there's anything that I am ashamed of out there by any stretch of the imagination. Nothing that I won't own and explain publicly.
So nothing to hide.
No, sir.
Good.
Okay, you know the scenario. It's no secret that the city has had a leadership challenges over the last several years. Clearly, a strong and confident city manager is necessary if the city is to continue to thrive. Getting up to speed quickly to hit the ground running is going to be crucial. Describe your process for becoming fully informed and ready to act.
I mean, first and foremost, it's sitting down with, I'd have to do this, I think, simultaneously with department heads and with council members, and in getting the lay of the land, establishing a way forward as far as getting consensus on what some priorities would be and what the method of attainment and delivery would be, and something that we can all coalesce around and start putting points on the board for, one little victory after another in achieving our mutually agreed upon goals to move the city forward. So that involves me meeting with you all as individuals, maybe as small committees, and then also meeting with staff. And eventually I'd also like to sit down with each individual employee and gain their perspective on, how they feel at the end of a workday working for the city of Clawson.
Okay, thank you.
Could you please provide us with any experience that you may have in obtaining outside funding, grants, what priority you would put on that for yourself and for additional staff? And feel free to take a drink or do whatever you need to make yourself comfortable at any time. We can do
Thank you.
something at this end to distract if you need. Just say, distract. Glenn, you're up. Just kidding.
So specifically, during my time in Harper Woods, I had success in achieving 3 financially distressed village, townships, and city grants to the total tune of $717,000, I believe it was. And that was specifically for to upgrade our analog meters, water meters, and for the installation, acquisition and installation of new windows at City Hall. So those are the three specific successes I've had. As far as getting more grant funding or making that a priority, I would align that with what are the priorities of the city? What are the priorities that we collectively established and are going to coalesce around? And let's go after and seek out funding and revenue sources based on those priorities. Instead of just trying to come up with a good idea independently, or council saying, "Hey Joe, I heard about this." If we have a plan and we're executing it accordingly, we're all focused on that, and we're not going to be distracted with any shiny objects or other additional. Things can be additional good ideas, but putting all of our gray matter and our organizational and management power and leadership behind an agreed upon set of priorities, I think, is the way forward. And from that, we seek out funding and grant resources accordingly.
Thank you.
Let's see. What would you do as city manager to help differentiate Clawson from neighboring communities in Southeast Michigan?
Differentiate. I'm not so sure it's a benefit to be different from your neighbors. Your neighbors are pretty successful. So we want to be successful just like them. But you have your own history, your own unique neighborhoods, and your own unique business district. So possibly collaborate, and maybe there is some collaboration. I'm just ignorant with the business communities from your neighbors. And trying to bring additional notoriety, not so much differentiating, but bringing greater awareness.
Okay, thank you.
When I reviewed your resume, I want to make sure I interpreted correctly that you enlisted in the U.S. Navy as an enlisted man and then eventually attained the level of an officer.
Yes, sir.
And that was, I think, about a 5 or 6 year time frame.
It was roughly 6 years, I enlisted in 91 and got my commission in 98. So it was, do the public math, 7 years.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make that clear. So you kind of got into the ground level, shall we say, as an enlisted man and worked your way through until you obtained a commission.
That is absolutely correct, sir.
Okay. If you just kind of describe your enlisted man experience, I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
Those steps.
So I always wanted to be in the military. And by the time, let me think. So when I was 17, I can still recall the Marine Corps recruiter, Staff Sergeant Purvis, coming to De La Salle High School wanting to recruit me. I came home and told my dad, "Hey, I want to join the Marine Corps." And he said, "Hey, when you're 18, you can do what you want." By the time I was 18, I was a little distracted, drinking, smoking, fighting. And I didn't realize, hey, it was time to grow up till I was 19. The Navy came out with a 2-year enlisted program. I thought, heck, I can hold my breath for 2 years. I'll enlist. So I enlisted in the 2-year airman program. And so I graduated from boot camp and I went to a 3-week school just to give me an orientation about naval aviation. And then I got sent to Naval Air Station ADAC. And I was like, I think I'm pretty good when it comes to geography, but I've never heard of this place. And ADAC, Alaska is in the Aleutian Islands near the Komodorsky Islands of Russia. And so when they announced my name, they said, these are the guys that are going to new construction and overseas. I thought, I'm going to go to the USS Washington, which was being built, the Abraham Lincoln, which was being built. I was going to be Top Gun, catching planes on a flight deck and And then they said all the guys who are going to overseas, and they said my name. And I'm like, well, there's got to be something wrong because I'm going overseas. They're telling me I'm going to Alaska. They're like, go to the giant ball map. And I said, okay. And they're like, you know where Alaska is? I said, yeah. They said, look for ADA. And I'm looking and looking. They're like, farther left. And that's where I ended up. So I ended up in Alaska and ended up picking up trash on the side of the road my first day on the island. And I was mad. I went and told the chief, I said, Chief, I didn't get sent to Alaska to pick up trash. He's like, son, yes, you did. And so I ended up picking up trash for my first couple weeks on the island. And then I got sent to do barrack support for a few months until I got sent to the fire department, where I became a dispatcher, and then eventually I became a crew chief on both crash and structural firefighting apparatuses. And then from there, I came back home, went to Macomb Community College, went in the reserves, and I served out at Selfridge as in the security detachment. And so I did 3 years in the reserves while I worked my way through community college, and then Eastern Michigan, attending Navy ROTC courses at the University of Michigan through their crosstown agreement. So I've got 6 years of enlisted experience, and the 1 year was my senior year in ROTC. I had been selected for a commission, and so therefore I was processed out of the enlisted ranks and was in a midshipman status.
Okay, thank you.
I got to know the rest of the story. How many years you got waiting for a flag?
I don't think that's in the cards. I'm a prior enlisted guy, and I don't think I have that academic polish to make it to the flag ranks. But I'll make sure I'm competitive just in case, the good Lord calls someone home and I fill someone's ranks. So that's the only way that I'm going to get selected.
Did we give him 10? Did we read 10?
I don't know. Let's see.
No, not yet.
It's all yours.
10. Oh, yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
We did that. Yep.
Go ahead then.
You had,
12. We have plenty of time.
We do?
she asked question 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we still have 12 from the list.
If you want it.
No. Go ahead.
You do not want it?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question. You clearly are disciplined because you've been in the military, and that means you probably think in a very structured way, which is a great thing if you are a person who thinks in a very structured way. For people who don't think in extremely structured ways, how flexible are you with your people that work with you and for you when they have more free thinking, just like, not so structured as the leader,
Yeah.
right? So do you expect everyone to get in rank? Like, it's not the military,
No.
but do you expect
No.
that? Or how do you lead? How do you lead with that? Because those are traits that are just innate in you.
It is, but, I've been in the Navy for 27 years. That doesn't include my 3-year break in service. And during that time, I've seen it change dramatically as far as, what are appropriate leadership skills, how we interact with our subordinates, how we train, mentor, develop our subordinates. And it took them a while to realize that people learn differently. And so, I'm a visual learner. Some people are, more academic, more technical. And so I don't expect people to, here's the thing is that it's not all, I'm more of a collaborative and more inclusive in developing solutions. And so when people are part of the solution, they have ownership. And so it's not so much, taking a direction from me. There's some things when they are direction in nature, most of the time that's not a surprise to people. And so they understand that role. But I think overall, being an inclusive manager and letting people know that, hey, you're a good idea. We're all trying to build a better mousetrap. And at the end of the day, making the community better, making our processes better, making the public services we deliver more timely, efficient, and appreciated. I think that's everyone's goal at the end of the day. So I'm not a tyrant or a dictator or a iron-fisted leader. So I don't think there'll be any there should be any concern of being too rigid in my ways.
Thank you. And I wasn't implying you were a tyrant, a dictator, or whatever the other one was. Thank you.
I didn't take it that way either.
No, I know. I just want to, for full disclosure here, right? Let's not get accused of anything here on this one.
So how are we on time and number of questions? Are we,
You've got
We've got
time for
15
another,
minutes.
and then maybe circle back.
Okay.
Closing.
okay. So you had talked about the taser situation. What, do you have experience in implementing an annual cost savings program? And if you did, what were the strategies and how successful was it?
I can't say that I have experience specifically. In my time during at Harper Woods, it was financially tenuous. So everything, I would talk to my finance director daily on issues, and when things would come up, we would discuss whether or not, hey, can we absorb this? Yeah, it was a mistake. Now, how is this going to impact us? And we knew, and there is always some buffer built into budgets anyway, to some degree. And so it's being aware of what that buffer is, and on those transactions that ebb and flow, how that is affecting your budget bottom line for that year. So I can't say that I have a specific cost saving program that was put in place, other than being very meticulous as far as, except in that one instance, but was still a cost savings over time when it comes to the expenditures.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson, do you have any more questions?
No, I don't.
How about you,
Thank
Councilmember Sampson? Okay, then I would like to thank you for coming and meeting with us, and you did great considering you're not feeling the best, so thank you.
Thank you.
My last question, which there's two parts. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us that we did not address with you that you were hoping to be able to, tell us how wonderful you are, or what great qualities, or something you want to just, blow your own horn over on a past accomplishment? And then other than that, would you please share with us why we should select you for this position over our other candidates?
Wow. Okay, so there's really nothing else that I don't want to blow my horn over you. I believe that everyone read my resume. And I've enjoyed this interaction. I will say that I was a little bit anxious about it just because of some of the observations on some of the recordings. And so, but I feel, I feel a good vibe with the council and with mayor, and as far as this initial exchange, and that's important. So I'm cautiously optimistic as far as potential selection, and as far as why I should be picked. I mean, I'll be 100% honest with you. If I was sitting on the council, I would probably be inclined to pick one of the other candidates by the name of, Wayne O'Neill. I mean, he's been a mentor of mine. He lives in the city. He's got fantastic experience, but I understand that if certain personalities don't fit for everyone, then, perhaps I might be the best fit for everybody. I think the important thing is something, especially with the dynamic that exists on the board, finding a candidate that everyone can agree upon. And if that happens to be me, then I'm fortunate. But if I was a council member and I had a cast a vote, I would be voting for, and I lived in the city, I would be voting for Wayne O'Neill, just because, he brings a wealth of experience. He's truly vested in the community. But again, it's got to be the right fit. So if I'm the right fit, then amen. But if I'm not, I would believe that chances are maybe Wayne's the right guy.
Well, I would like to thank you for that extremely gracious response and for your being gracious about us as well. We're really not as bad as you might think. But, and the problems in the community that I was referring to in the beginning, or with the city, weren't really the ones sitting on the, up here. It was just the overall, financial, we have some big things coming up, big issues that we need to address, and what we've been dealing with is, nothing compared to what we really need to be putting our efforts into, and we just need a good leader to be able to help guide us and to get those things done. But I wish you health. I wish you get well, and then we'll see if we'll be speaking with you in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Up to you if you'd like to take a break or if you'd like to have a conversation.
anybody need a break?
Take 5.
Okay, we'll take another 5.
Wait until he's got down. Time's up.
You got 3 seconds.
We're here. Okay, we are back, and we have now successfully interviewed all 5 of our candidates, and we have Mr. Vetrano here from GovHR, and he's going to discuss our next steps.
Sure. Thank you very much, Council. I appreciate your interviewing of the candidates and moving forward with this process. So as I talked about yesterday, right before we started, the goal is really to narrow down from this pool to a second round of interview if that's your choice. But our recommendation is you would narrow it down. We would then create a second interview that would be all on the same day with ideally 2 to 3 candidates. If this body says all 5 are great and we want to see them all again, that's your prerogative. But our goal would be to engage with the community, with the community open house. Our goal would be to engage with employees earlier in the day and then culminate with a second round interview with City Council here back in this chambers. We can have discussion about dates and times and timing, and I can work with your interim city manager to hammer all that out. What I also want to offer to you is if you want Did something just happen?
Just a normal, seasonal issue.
If you want candidates to provide a pre-prepared presentation, we often do that in a second round interview, including a pre-prepared presentation of themselves, but also if there's a question we want them to address, whether it's fictitious or one that the community has dealt with in the past, just to see their presentation style, because that is a big part of this job. They will be presenting to you often, at least commenting with semi-prepared remarks often. All of that can be handled between now and that next interview. What I would ask this evening, if you'd like, is to have a facilitated discussion to see if you're prepared to select your candidates that you'd like to move forward to that second round. Certainly, I can take direction that you want to think on the matter and you want to review the tape again. Both of those choices are fully in your control. Again, I have no pre-prescribed 2, 3, 4, or 5 candidates that you'd like to move forward to that second round. So I would defer now to you if you'd like to engage in a discussion about candidates you prefer to move forward, or if you'd like to not have that conversation tonight and schedule another meeting or do it at a future meeting. For candidates' sake, the sooner the better. My facilitation technique in this case, whether it's now or later, is to focus on candidates that you are most interested in bringing back as opposed to candidates that you'd like to not bring back. It doesn't do the candidates well, nor you to really focus too much on those that you aren't interested in bringing back, but rather if a council member has a strong opinion to bring someone back and others want to agree with that or disagree with that, that's the best way to begin and continue that conversation so that those candidates that kind of either aren't mentioned or left at the end are the ones that you aren't bringing back. That's just a technique that I think is respectful in a public discussion. I turn it over to you for guidance.
Okay, so the first question would be, is anyone here ready to make a determination on whom we would want to bring back for a second round?
I am.
Do you need more time, or are you comfortable with the interviews we've had today to say, not necessarily I'm going to select so-and-so, but I would like to hear more from so-and-so? Does anyone feel any
I'm
way?
ready to give up a couple candidates to bring back.
How about you, Mr. Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, I'm in favor of just, making some decisions tonight.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yeah, I just would say that my experience in having to see candidates and then quickly make a turnaround in less than a day, sometimes, I'd like to have some time to sit and do that, but I've been in situations where we've had to make decisions quickly, and I think it's important that we get this done sooner the better, so we can move forward.
So how about, let's, I don't know how to do this.
You said you'd facilitate it.
Pardon me?
You said you'd facilitate it, right?
My suggestion is if someone has a strong opinion on someone they'd like to bring back is to offer that person and then you engage in a discussion if you'd like to have that person back or not as a place to start.
That is exactly what I would have said.
Thank you.
There we go.
So,
You had a magical wand or something.
I do not have a magical wand. If I did, I would be Man, that would be nice, but I
Have a
do
gavel?
not. I do have a gavel,
It's
though.
not magical.
And it has my name on it, and it is magical. It was a gift.
Oh, okay.
Of course, it's magical. So,
You need to learn how to hit it hard.
you probably don't want to encourage me to hit anything. That's not good form. It's beginning and end, that's it. So, anyone want to throw out some, is there, I personally would like to say I enjoyed hearing from all 5 of the candidates. I feel strongly about 3 of them. They all had unique experiences or attitudes or encouraging leadership styles. It would be nice if we could just throw them all into a pot and come out with one, right? But that's not how it works. So I will say, I guess what I would ask of you, if you're comfortable, is to give me the names of the people whom you'd like to see again. And we'll just start that way. And then we can bring as many as we choose, right? If you guys are comfortable with 5, we can bring all 5 back. But I agree with Mr. Vitrino, if we have very little interest in perhaps hiring someone, let's not waste their time or ours. It would be a horrible disservice to all of us, especially to them. It would be mean. So if you have a list, let's start with that. And then if we can either go with all of the names that are thrown out, or we can whittle down from there based on conversation. So would you like to go first?
Sure. Mr. LeCamper, Mr. McClary, and Mr. Raker.
Okay, Councilmember Sampson?
I'm good with McClary and Riker.
Councilmember Anderson?
I'm good with Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Recker, and Mr. Martin.
And, hold on, I have to pull my names out. I also like Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Recker, and I liked Mr. Martin. There's something in everybody. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. No, do we have all names? We don't have all names.
Yeah.
We do have all the names.
Yes.
Okay. So,
They were all good candidates.
They were.
You know, they all,
I
we
can
can't
count that
hire
you're
5.
unanimous on one of them, so if you want to move forward with one of them, get that off the list. You all said Wrecker.
yeah, I just don't want to limit it to someone that's unanimous. I want everyone to have the
Right,
opportunity
right, yeah.
to bring someone back if they feel that there's a strong reason to bring them back. Because this is a very formal, anybody can, there were candidates that the longer they talk, the more like all of us, the longer you have the opportunity in front of someone, the more comfortable you become, the more you get to figure out who they are and perhaps how they might respond to something. And everyone's not perfect in this type of environment, but they may shine in another environment. So personally, I'd like to give anybody an opportunity that we're going to consider. So we have all 5. Is there anyone that anyone would say maybe not, or you're comfortable with all of them? You're comfortable with your answers is what I should say.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, one of the things the reason why I liked Mr. LeCamper, it seemed that his knowledge right off the bat, it seemed like it was encyclopedic. Didn't seem like there was much struggle to try and come up with a reference point to what he was speaking about, and that I thought that was refreshing. The other thing too, I do like that while he's younger, he does seem to have that experience, and I think that's from where he's coming from. This would be a nice step, an appropriate step for what his abilities could probably provide. And he's also from the area as well.
Okay.
Well, I like Mr. O'Neill for several reasons. One, he's got a lot of experience, and we need someone, I think, with a lot of experience at this point. Also, I think some of the concerns of the city is looking at infrastructure issues, and he's got a lot of experience in dealing with that. It's interesting, his resume, at one point he said, I'm a proven mentor, and apparently we got to listen to one of his mentorees, his acolytes, who then endorsed him. So that's one of the reasons I feel very strongly about Mr. O'Neill.
Okay. anything? Nope. Okay, well, I would concede to, if I'm the only one who's interested in Mr. Martin, then I would like to remove him from the list because I know that would not be beneficial for him coming in, and I wouldn't want to waste his time. So
There were two.
Oh, there were two?
Yeah,
Two of us?
Mr. Anderson.
Okay, sorry. So then,
I mean, he's one of the three I put out there.
okay, we can keep him then. I thought I was the only one. I didn't
Yeah, no.
like make my list perfect, so when I got to all the, I guess I didn't duplicate names, so then are you all comfortable with having 5 people come back for another set of interviews that includes,
I mean, I'm comfortable with 5, but you are going to ask quite a bit of a time investment for yourself again, and if we want to engage the community, it's probably a 2-night situation again, as opposed to containing it to 1. I may refine how much participation we have from, well, it will just take more time from your staff and from the community and from them preparing, all of them preparing presentation. I would encourage you to narrow to something less than 5, but certainly I appreciate the mayor's sentiment that if there's someone up here that believes that they can convince a majority of the board that that candidate can do the job after a second round and a second look, even if they aren't getting support tonight, they should stay on the list. But the more you narrow, the closer you can look at them, the more refined your questions can be directly to them, and maybe a little more time your staff can give you feedback and the community can give you feedback if you're a little narrower. I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth of saying, if you want them all, great, but when we do the staff interaction and the public interaction, I'm going to give them cards or an opportunity to give you feedback. And if they've got 2 days of 5 people swirling, I'm not sure that feedback you get is going to be as valuable as if it's a little more narrow. Just like your questions or your focus, if you can focus a little bit more narrow. I've probably said enough to suggest if you narrow it, may be an easier or better process. But I respect absolutely the mayor's sentiment that if somebody wants to hear somebody else come back, because this is a very formal first round, I defer to that as well.
How many, 4, we only got 1 4? How many 3s we got?
I didn't do it that well.
One person
I just
went all
like wrote the
4.
names down.
Mr. McKeechlag, can you lay it out for us, please?
Yep, I can do that. Hang on.
But you,
I can, and you can double check me, I guess. O'Neill had 2, Lampier had 1, Riker had 4, McClary had 2, and Martin had 2.
Yeah, there were no 3s.
3.
Yeah.
1 4, 1 1, and then 3 2s.
I would say, I don't know, you've all looked at the resumes and we heard people speak. Giving out the right words is great. Having great managerial mantra is great, but having practical experience is essential, right? And I think we need to look in terms of that when we're looking at our candidates. That's what I'm looking for. Having done this, unfortunately, more times than I would ever thought I would have to or choose to, I really would love to get this right this time, as far as not just hiring a nice guy, not just hiring a guy that seems like he'd get along with everyone, not just hiring a guy who can talk the talk. Like, we need someone who's been in the trenches a little bit and can figure out the systems that we have and help address the big issues we have coming up. And Mr. Councilmember Anderson is correct. You know, we need to look at our roads. We need to look at our infrastructure. We need to look at funding. We need to look at budget issues. Someone who has all of that experience at, a decent, repeatedly, I think is going to do our community a good service, as opposed to someone who wants to work well with others, which is essential, but doesn't necessarily have the battle scars to get the jobs done. And not that they couldn't, right? I'm not saying that just because they haven't had the experience, they're not going to be able to get us to the same place, but we're really in a critical place here as far as what we need.
Yep.
You want a leader. You want a leader with experience.
How about, you have a good idea there, you probably don't even know it, how about having presentations on, take our roads, all the information that we can give them on the roads, and do their presentation on the roads and maybe the sewers, and have them come in, all five of them, or whatever we pick, have them come do a presentation on what they think would be the best way to do this, and plans, and that would be a great way.
I mean, I'm all for the presentation. I think that's an exceptional idea. I think that's asking a lot. I know we have the information out there. We could give them one of our past studies. I would hate to put them you don't want them to have to put in 8 hours to put something together for an interview that they may or may not get. I don't think that's fair. I'm fine with having them put something together that would maybe solve a problem, or would show how they would manage a budget, or a budget and a problem, or a promotion, or just like overview of Clawson, like what our pluses and minuses are, or something like that. I think that's more appropriate to ask them for.
I think anybody's going to put, even if you ask them, tell us how to sharpen a pencil, I think the people that are going to put 8 hours in are going to put 8 hours in sharpening the pencil. I think the other people are going to go, well, do this road and this road first, and just, they'll take 3 hours or 2 hours. The people that want the job, if I wanted it, I would put in 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
Well, I mean, it might weed people out too. They might go, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that may not be the ultimate decision that we'd like to have make, right?
Well, I mean, compliance, willingness to play along is a lot of the job, right?
If I may, I'm really comfortable to provide members scenarios to choose from. And the goal will be for them to demonstrate their ability to present a thought process to you. Some people may have a lot of experience on roads, while others focused on public safety, while others have more of an acumen coming from a clerk's office into the manager's role. So depending on how you shade those questions can really jade a performance potentially. We would look for something that really helps them to demonstrate their thought process and communication ability, as opposed to very specific solve a problem. But I'm happy to engage in those conversations and offer choices. I would like you to focus, if you can, really on the number this evening.
Yes, we can't hire 5 city managers, right? I think, and I agree with you, I think it wouldn't be fair to drag all 5 in again. So, I think it's interesting that all of us like Mr. Reckler, and yet Reckler, which I thought was very magnanimous and shocking, said you should hire Wayne O'Neill. So, maybe in kind of a bizarre manner, we'd have Mr. Reckler make our decision for us. But that's... And I have to admit, as I was listening to the candidates, I thought they all interviewed well. Part of it is, though, at this point, they're interviewing with a council. But their day-to-day activity is how they're going to interact with their subordinates. And there's, again, about 42 employees. And so I kind of had to just envision not just how well are they presenting to us, but how well do I think this person will manage others? And I think they'll all do a decent job, but that's kind of why I'm leaning toward the experience. That's why I really do like both Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Reckler.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
Well, some of it was, a measure of what I appreciated. There's a sense of humility and the responsibility that's coming with this role, right? The deference that I think we received from some of the candidates on, that we're the body. They still need to be a strong city manager, but again, it's that cooperation that they're not necessarily the one that's the top of the mountain, so to speak. And I appreciated that perspective from some of the candidates, because there's that measure of it that I think is important. The other thing for me is a fresh perspective. Coming from someplace else, that I really appreciate. Also the longevity potential is something that, while I appreciate, hearing 30 years of service, I hear 30 years of service, and my grandfather was, in retirement the next year in 31, right? So, that's a concern for me on what that means long-term. So that's the reason why, some of the candidates that I had selected were fitting into that criteria.
Well, and along that vein, if we look at some of these resumes, we have people who have not stayed in places very long. And it is nature of the position that, 3 to 5 years is probably standard, if I'm not mistaken, for most city managers.
4.5.
Okay, I see, I was right in there then.
An NFL player.
3 to 5 years.
If we can get that, we're doing really well.
So, saying that, Clawson is most likely not a landing ground for most people, right? You're gonna come here, you're gonna get some more experience, and you're gonna move on someplace larger.
Hey.
Or we'll talk about this at some point, right? Let's see. But you've already done that. You've already been other places. You've already put time in, right? Especially, we're talking, the mindset of the worker these days is not longevity. It is you stay somewhere for a while, you leave, you get more money, you go there, you stay for a short while, you leave, you get more money. That's what kids are told today, young adults are told not to stay in jobs these days, because when you jump, you make more. That's the mindset.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for these people, but I would say, I would be leery of a couple of these people just based on their longevity in places, and for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that people tend to jump jobs more often than they used to, I mean, that is a development. It doesn't mean it's a positive one. Also, if you're gonna go through different managers, you'd like the transitions to be smooth. I think Mr. O'Neill, of course, he's got a lot of years in, and he's probably nearing the end of his career, to put it bluntly. But there'll be a person after him. And he did put in his resume, I just thought it was interesting, proven record for mentoring. And then we got to hear from a gentleman who we all like, Mr. Reckler, who was mentored by Mr. O'Neill. So I think one reason I still like Mr. O'Neill is that he'll serve for some time and possibly mentor the next person that will come along. Mr. Reckler apparently was a very good disciple, and there may be others.
So of the 5 that are on the list, I will again say that if there is a spirit of wanting to narrow it down, I'll do a concession on 1, if anyone else will do a concession on 1. And not that you have to, I'm not saying you have to, but if we're getting people in and in your head it's not gonna play out, let's not do that.
So
And in between time, I made calls on some of these people, some people that I knew had associations with other people, and I would encourage everyone to do that as well, because a piece of paper says whatever you want it to. A conversation like this, everyone knows what the right answers are. Some answer quicker and sharper than others. Some people take a little longer to figure these things out, but past practice and other relationships and other views of people in the industry would also be wise for us to capture on anyone that we can.
Reminds me. So the ones you move forward, we will do a formal background check. That would be the standard practice, so that as we're scheduling your next second round interview, we would begin the background checks on the formal background checks. We, as you know, when we talked before, we did a Google background check, we did references, but we will do the formal third-party background check on any candidates who move forward. I appreciated the mayor's suggestion that if potentially we could get to 3. I note, and again, I think one member offered 2 check marks, and 3 of you offered 3 check marks in terms of the candidates that you picked. If everybody went to 2, you may get there. But again, that's only a tool if you wish to use. I appreciate the mayor's suggestion that maybe there's an opportunity to get down to 3.
Is anyone interested in going to 3?
I think it's important that we
You mean,
get to 3.
pick your top
mean the
top
top
2.
two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
right.
did
The top
2.
two.
I'll
I
do
did
2.
3.
I'm fine
Yeah,
with
I'll
that.
do 3.
I'm good with the top
Let's-
2.
Okay,
Shall I go first?
sure.
Okay, O'Neill and Reckler. Master and the Apprentice.
Councilmember Sampson?
McClary and Riker.
My choice is O'Neill and Reckler as well. And Councilmember Shepherd. I know why you want to pick the one. I do, because I really liked him yesterday. I liked him a lot. I was like, he's so peaceful. But then you have to go big picture.
Well, that's part of the reason why, right? I'm going big picture as well. I think from maybe a different perspective.
Yeah, no, you're entitled to
So,
yours. I don't know
So I would be LeCamper and Ricker.
that. Okay.
How'd that work out?
That gives us 2 O'Neills, 3 Recklers, and 1.
For record. There's no L in there, folks.
Oh,
For
sorry.
record.
I was just repeating what everyone else was saying.
I know.
You're right, Wrecker. So 2 O'Neills, 4 Wreckers, and 2,
No, McCreary and the camper.
Each have one.
each have 1. Are you guys okay with going with 2?
Yeah.
2 candidates, or do you want someone else?
Which would be,
Recker and O'Neill by
Recker and
that
O'Neill.
count.
I'm fine with adding a 3rd one,
Yeah.
if you want to add a 3rd one, but we need to come to consensus.
Does anybody else like McClary? I think he had.
I'm,
Not on my list. For resume reasons
yeah.
and conversation, just not my favorite. I mean, honestly, I would go Mr. LeCamper based on why you're going LeCamper, but he probably wouldn't be my final candidate.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, I mean, winnowing to 3 is good, but really winnowing to 2 is better. If we could winnow it to 1, we could all be done here, but obviously.
I do not believe it'd be wise to select
No,
over
no,
these,
definitely not.
over these
It's not fair
45-minute
to bring in
interviews.
people that, you know.
I
that's serious.
appreciate the humor in selecting one, and I appreciate us giving them all a chance. And I really, and what I'm hearing is you're really deciding if you're going to bring that 3rd one, or you're going to coalesce around 2.
Yeah,
I think that's a productive discussion you're having.
I will go with Mr. LeCamper to bring it to the 3rd, if anyone else would like to, if anyone else leans towards him at all.
I'll definitely listen to him again.
I have no objection to listening to him.
And that gives us 3, and he was very solid in his presentation to us. I just didn't feel he had great experience to go along with it, but definitely would be peaceful for the community, I think, and professional.
And I do want to, give you deference in the numbers that you want. 3 is a really good number, both because you can have good interactions with that number, and if we lose a candidate between now and your 2nd, you will still be presented with a choice of candidate. So I appreciate your diligence this evening in getting there.
Just one final thing about Mr. LeCamper, from what I researched, that he was the final 3rd candidate for Mount Pleasant, or not, Mount Clemens, I want to say, I believe, but anyway, that was from, at some point in time, but anyway.
Is everyone comfortable with this? I don't want anyone leaving and thinking we beat him down on
I
numbers.
think 3 is a good number, and if we can all agree on that, yeah, I'm fine.
How about you,
No, I'm Mount
Councilmember?
Pleasant, yeah.
I'm good.
Just wanna-
Central Michigan, which one is it?
I'm good.
Yeah, so,
And yeah,
We got to make a motion for this so we can,
You can't, we're in a workshop.
no, we're not.
special meeting.
We're in a meeting.
Special meeting?
Yeah, we're officially in a meeting, a called meeting, yeah.
don't worry, we'll get the memo if we do it wrong.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
What a motion I want to make, that we pick Riker,
Yes,
the Campbells,
LeCamper,
the Camper, and O'Neill.
correct.
For a second interview. Okay.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yeah.
Councilmember Shepherd. Yes.
Okay, with
The 3, sir.
that,
Now, we need what kind of question are we going to give them?
we are going to make a motion to ask GovHR to proceed with contacting these 3 candidates and bring them back in for a second interview at a time that will be determined at a later date, because we need to confer availability and schedules
No.
for all around.
And I will provide you question opportunity via email. I'll give you a sample. I will also, please send me your suggestions and I will try and massage them. We won't be on an email chain with all elected officials. It will just be one-to-one. If you have a suggested question or suggestion, I will accumulate that and then provide you a draft document for you to review.
You're talking questions, what questions are you talking?
If there's a scenario question that you
Oh,
would
got it.
suggest.
Okay.
The presentation part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the final interview, we can ask whatever questions are germane to
Pertinent.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
the-
I will have guidance for you again. I will give you options again. But I'm mostly specifically, thank you, talking about a scenario. If you have a
Okay.
specific scenario you'd like me to consider, but again, I'm going to try and really scrub
We're
those.
out.
Hold up one second.
We're offline.
Oh,
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be on Zoom. Yeah.
Cool. I'm really going to try and give the candidates an opportunity to present their thought process and communication as opposed to driving to a specific recommendation. So,
I think it would be helpful if they would tell us what they feel like their immediate goals would be for the community. And I don't mean sitting down and talking to people and figuring things out. I mean, they should know enough about us at this point to know what's going on and what they would want to address. I know we get to drive the ship, but they have input as well. And I would like to know what that input is, just to see where their mindset would be and how they
Right.
would want to help encourage progress here.
and however we set it up with guide rails, when I give an expectation of you have 5 minutes and we expect a presentation, those guide rails help expand those answers that you're most interested in. So if there's a scenario you would like to send to me, I will send an email to all of you tomorrow individually to say, shoot me your scenario just so it's at the top of your email box. And then I'll work through that.
Okay.
All right?
So, motion was to, we had a long motion, right? We have
To direct
basically
HR to
two.
Bring
move
back the
forward.
motion.
The language was to direct over HR to reach out to these candidates, schedule a second interview, and provide questions and a dialogue to get your ideas for questions.
You're really good.
That's my shorthand. Just read my shorthand.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mayor Milano.
Wait, you made the motion?
Yeah.
You can't second it.
I
I'll
did.
second.
No, Mayor Milano.
Oh, you did? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
she made that one.
Okay.
She made that one. They're kind of two of the same thing.
Guys need to
You
hold
picked,
pieces
and then
of
your
paper and keep
information to
notes.
move forward.
Okay, perfect.
So, Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss this evening? Any questions, concerns about the process, about how we're going to move forward, about
I
what we want
guess
to
we
see
just have
moving
to,
forward?
got a couple of things we're juggling. We got to get this scheduled, and we have that workshop to talk about the millages. I know Scott put out an email today saying that our original date wasn't possibly going to work.
You received everybody's response on when that could happen? Okay.
Yeah, I think you proposed February 1st.
The 31st.
First is a meeting,
I'm sorry, it's the
You proposed the 31st.
31st.
It's the Monday before.
Monday, 31st.
31st for the workshop, 1st for our regular scheduled meeting.
First is the regular meeting,
Sure.
correct?
First meeting of the month. And so you recommend the 31st. Is it a good time to kind of talk out?
You got mine, right?
Same, yeah.
I actually didn't
31st.
respond. I mean, I guess I'm okay with the 31st if,
I'll say okay, but I might actually have a
Mayor
conflict.
said she had to look.
that's what I'm getting at. We really all need to be here for that.
Yeah.
That's
I'll say
huge.
yes, if I have something that's non-negotiable, I'll let you know, but otherwise, I'll do everything I can. to
I
get
mean,
you
there's a
here.
clock ticking, right?
Correct.
So I'm thinking these interviews that we schedule will be out a ways.
Well, the other thing too is that what constraints do we have for the candidates on?
Well, I'll be working with the candidates, but actually that same week, if interim manager is working on that week of the 31st, it is likely I'll be targeting that same week. So if there is a secondary date in there after your regular meeting, great, or that following week. I would not want to go any further out than that week of the 7th.
Yeah, exactly. We owe these people a response.
Yeah.
Well, they'll all get a response tomorrow morning.
I'll lose them.
But,
Exactly.
but in terms of
Time,
scheduling, you are correct. I would be looking for the week of the 31st or the week of the 7th. And again, it's probably easier unless everybody wants to pull out their, I actually would prefer to work directly with the interim manager, mostly because I want to schedule with staff and I want to schedule with the public and with the four of you. So that date has a little bit more moving parts, but only your part is in the evening. You're welcome to attend the other parts. But we're going to schedule probably from noon on with the candidates in various meet the community, go for meet the employees, meet the community, and then have this. Maybe noon's a little early. I'll figure it out because we're going to have them in succession, not together for the employee meetings. Yes.
I'm just thinking about the process. It doesn't
Sure.
connect to me, the whole, never mind, it's good.
Motion to adjourn?
You were about to say something.
No, I'm interested in feedback, whether it's now or later.
It just seems like a disconnect to have a meeting with everyone prior to having another round of interviews to expose more about the people. So when you're having the meet and greet with the community and the meet and greet with the employees, it's basically just a personality thing that you're getting, not necessarily skill-based, and we want both, right? So to me, it's kind of like a little superficial. It is, I want that. I want both of those portions. It's critical. I don't know how else you would do it, though. It just seems out of sync.
Very open to how you would suggest those be structured. Generally, for employees, it's a bit more of them presenting themselves, and there is some more meat to the questions. For the community, it is tending to just meet and greet. It tends to be, I'm not going to call it superficial, but it certainly will be more conversational. If there's other approaches, I am happy to have those conversations, and we can even do it offline and talk more about it.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a better way, it just doesn't seem, it seems like something's missing to me.
Sure.
But we did have a motion to adjourn, if no one has
Second.
anything else. Okay,
There was no public comment, I'm assuming? No one's out
oh,
there?
yeah, sorry.
Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Milan?
Yes.
We're adjourned at 9:52.
Yay, it's not 10.